All right, hi there. So I was talking to a friend of mine. Um Basically what we were discussing is the lack of confidence in the associated and from the American people in the Associated Press when they called this election. And I want to say that it's not I don't think that it's just because there are a lot of people that don't like the winner. Um, I think that it has a lot to do with the weaponization of the media and the polarization of our populace here in America through that. There's been a lot of talk about the election's going to be tampered with, both from the left and the right. Um, and so we know that there are going to be hearings conducted tomorrow, which is Monday, from the time that I recorded this. There are going to be hearings conducted because there are some questionable things like ballots that seemingly came out of nowhere for from the perspective of outsiders. And there have also been, we've seen that the image cast evolution technology used by Dominion Voting Company has had some discrepancies, large discrepancies, on at least one of their machines documented. We also have legislation that was passed by the Supreme Court changing the way that states can force their electoral colleges to vote in different directions, right? So we know a couple things. That is a new law that kind of governs how elections will be considered. And we also know that the Electoral College is not finalizing their submissions um, until the 14th of December. They don't have to. We also know that some states, although they say, okay, the race is done, they haven't counted all of the rest of the votes, even though the votes that are left wouldn't really change the outcome based on what they claim to have found. We also know that in at least one of the states, the governor has said that he's going to need a recount. So we have some of those things going on. We have them to consider also that it wasn't just the president that was listed on the ballot. So uh, there were a few other things. There were amendments, there were commissioners, there were representatives, and then a big deal this year, kind of a big theme, has been the justice system. So on those ballots, there were also judges as well as sheriffs, which are elected positions, or at least to get some of them out of office too. Like, should so and so remain in office, and and then or should we appoint somebody else? So I mean, there's that. The minimum wage was on the ballots, and the tax taxes according to like property taxes, that was on the ballot, like homestead property taxes. I know at least here it was. How many how many times do you have to vote before an amendment passes? That was on the ballot, kind of a big deal. Um, Especially when you're trying to get things changed, do you want it to be a longer process just to solidify it, or do you want it to go ahead and take effect as quickly as you think that these propositions need to go into effect? Uh, Also, who can you see on your primary ballot, right? When you go to the primary elections, usually they give you a ballot and they say that the nominees that you can see, you're only taking from you're only able to choose from your affiliated party. But on your primary ballot, they said, hey, there was an amendment option. Do you want to be able to see all of them, all of the candidates available during the primaries? And then during the general election, we'll only give you two. Is that good? Yes, no, that was on there. So it's not just the presidency that we want to call. There was so many other things. So as far as the democratic process, we kind of need to have confidence that there's no funny business going on, right? And I want to talk to you guys about a couple other things. So I was looking up today the World Population Review, and America, the United States of America, is ranked number 25 for its democratic process. The most America is the most heavily populated country, and that's only under India and China. And India, ranked for its democratic process, is at number 41, and then China was ranked at number 129. Now we know China's not really a democracy, but what I really want you to kind of pay attention to is that American civil liberties, according to the World Population Review, were ranked 8.24 out of 10. Indian civil liberties, for as big as these populations are ranked 7.35 out of 10. And Chinese civil liberties ranked at 1.47 out of 10. That being said, America has the largest population of any democracy in the world. And it's got the third largest population in the world. And so what I noticed from my research today is that civil liberties do kind of seem to decline when populations increase. And that just might be perceived civil liberties too. Okay, so, you know, there are countries that are very small that have absolutely none, but there are countries that are very small that have just way more than we are perceived to have. But usually democracies aren't lasting more than about 300 years, right? And this is just throughout history, at least without falling. Maybe they fall and then rise again. But, you know, on average, there are not a lot of people who have lived with democracy in their lives. A lot of them have lived through some form of autocracy or monarchy, through dynasties, something. And the reason why that is because, and I want you to pay attention to this, it's expensive and it's difficult to maintain a democracy, because for a larger population, especially over time, because it is difficult to keep people educated. And I'm not just saying the schools suck and people aren't learning enough algebra. No, it's difficult to keep people informed about the processes, about how to be involved, where to get resources, what you can do, what you should do. And we notice that in countries where democracy fails, it begins with, you know, for larger population countries where democracy has seemed to fail, it begins with the polarization of the people through media. And America is its own anomaly because America is this giant multicultural melting pot. You've got people from all over the world with all kinds of backgrounds. And it's a lot easier to have people become polarized and tribalized because of these things, or utilizing these things. Essentially, you'll have the media. The media is going to be paid for by advertising and special interests and things like that, right? So they're going to be the main source of information dissemination and conveying what is true and the reality, and creating the reality where you're going to get your baseline perceptions of what's outside of your direct circle of influence, or how you can be impacted or what you can have an impact on, right? So usually the media, and as we could see, we're seeing the evidence of the polarization. Like, it's undeniable. We know that if somebody says something, you're a QAnon sympathizing Trump supporter, or you're a liberal radical Bidenist. I don't know what the I guess I should probably adopt more terms. And while the Constitution is supposed to protect the people by giving them the right to be involved in the democratic process, unless it's seen as an obligation in general, and unless it remains and maintains a unifying duty by the citizens, because of course it's a right, and that's the benefit of living in a democracy, but it's also the obligation, right? So like, if you want to maintain it, you need to, as the people have to be involved. They have to have the oversight, and they have to not concede to anything that threatens it, regardless of whether or not their the people that are going to take seats and positions in the government, their elected officials, whether or not those people are the people that they were in favor of. You're basically asking for the most popular candidate to take power. And while it's true that you have a candidate that has propositions that these people like, they also might hurt the things that you hold as sacred and valuable if you don't like that candidate winning. But do you sacrifice the democratic process and the confidence in it in order to have your outcome fulfilled? So this is where the failure points in democracy kind of exist, especially with large populations, and especially in the anomaly that is America. This is a big multicultural nation, and it is a democracy, and it is very expensive and very time consuming to maintain it, and it also requires the will of the people. And I'm not saying that you have had your free will stripped from you by social media or regular mainstream media or any of those dopamine inducing platforms that you're receiving information and perceptions from. Those at this time are being curated. I mean, we are on the brink of a technological revolution where we are starting to understand and be able to measure and quantify how it works. Um, but we're experiencing that the fall of democracy is possible. Um, the media has the right to free press, freedom of speech. They have a responsibility to disseminate the truth. But since the lines of truth can be blurred through opinion and release of liability and legal loopholes, it's not a requirement for them to maintain this ethical conversation, right? So America's also the oldest of its size for a democratic republic, and we are on the verge of 250 years. Like I said, not many of them last. Not many democracies last for more than 300 years, at least without the decline and the decay. Because people are free to believe what they want. So it's easy to, it's become easier. It's become a weaponized machine, whether or not the people that run these machines and these companies, the technology, the information dissemination companies, the social media companies, whether they had planned originally to be the vessels that were capable of what they're capable of, and whether or not they had originally planned to do what's happening. It's happening. We're finding out how this works and how this kind of it does become a threat to democracy, right? I mean, in order to maintain a democracy, you have to have a body of people who are willing to stay educated in the process of how things work, of what's going on, who's doing what. They have to have access to these systems to be able to have influence. They got to go to the city halls or at least watch or read a briefing. They got to know where to get that information, or they have to know that that's even something that they could do. There's a lot of people that if I was like, hey, there's a city hall meeting, they'd be like, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know anything about, and they wouldn't feel like they had any business there knowing anything about it, right? Generations have passed since this nation has been built. That's how these things happen, right? There was a generation that fought really hard to leave a tyrannical government behind. Many tyrannical governments, actually, they fought really hard to leave them behind. They came here in search many times of a better life and more ability, and they wanted to give their kids these things. So generations passed, far removed, and they don't. There's a big separation from what it takes to embody, just what it takes to embody the fundamental value system for democracy, and how to avoid any corruption and tyranny and things like that. And when you're so far removed due to generational gaps and any of these things, I mean, the social media monster has the power of mimetic influence, right? So they can take these ideas, which are able to destabilize people through perceptions, they can destabilize your mental abilities. I mean, and you do this voluntarily. You adopt them, right? You adopt these little tiny ideas, these little mimetic, these posters, these mimetic things, right? And you form your own culture. Sometimes they tack these ideas on with cultures that are already established, right? So like you could tack something onto like the feminism movement or the and they something like that. So I don't know. Let me think of one. Toxic positivity. You tack that you tack toxicity onto positivity. That's a double think method, and then you have people starting to they become a little more malleable because now they think positivity is toxic. It's poison. So anybody who's positive is just they're not good, right? So positivity is empowering and things like that, and toxicity is lethal. So when you make these little things that kind of promote and perpetuate these social engineering methods, you destabilize, you emotionally, physically destabilize the people. And it's not to say that, people start shouting, "Oh, you're an ableist," and why I'm no, no, just disability is a thing. It's a thing. It needs to be respected, and you need to be aware of it, but by no means should you adopt a disability if you don't have to have one, right? So emotional intelligence has been something that's been thrown way out the door. It's just there are so many people that are unaware of, and there's a stigma almost against, with a big part of the population, against the emotional intelligence, which is an evolution of the human mechanism, right? So anger, each emotion that a human has is a useful tool, right? So anger, your heart rate, if you're intelligent about it, you know what it's for. You know why your body does this, responds this way, and everything. So anger, your heart rate goes up, right? It needs to send blood to your brain. If you don't know how to navigate that, you're gonna constrict your blood vessels, and you're gonna, you give yourself a heart attack, right? But if you know how to navigate anger, you know that your heart rate's going to go up. You need to breathe deeper. You need to breathe slower so that blood can get to your brain, so that you can make better decisions and take your body to a position of homeostasis. Not that you're going to get to homeostasis just by breathing, but there's going to be things that you need to think of to do, and you need to be able to think clearly. So your body sets yourself up for that. Anxiety. Not everybody has anxiety, but you will see a larger portion of the population claiming that they suffer from it because just feeling nervous is not a thing, or excited, right? You think your heart rate's been elevated, and you got the cold sweats or the shakes or something, and you think that these are symptoms of anxiety. I must have a chronic issue. No, these are human emotions. Your body is preparing to take action. Sadness has its own things too. Your body and your mind are trying to get you to a good spot, and while your body trying to take you to homeostasis can also lead you to counterintuitive, counteractive ways of being. You have to be intelligent about it. You have to know how to navigate it. You have to have cognizance and the ability to do that. And the fact of the matter is, us as humans, we have the ability to adapt and think and overcome a lot of things that we have been socially engineered to deny ourselves, because being malleable, like destabilizing and being malleable, means that you are easier to market to. Your attention is easier to take from these platforms, and you become a more profitable consumer. And so these marketing has been in the science of psychology and memetics since the dawn of time. Neurolinguistic programming and the person-to-person interaction, things like this. Just so when it comes to polarizing the people, there is an intentional, there are things that are going on that are intentional. Whether you want to say it's a conspiracy or not, I don't know about all that. I don't know that it's organized or that there is some divine plan behind it. I almost kind of feel like um, people are just, the people in charge are just kind of rolling with it. Each different little person that's involved in, each news report, each everything has their own tiny little, agenda. We need more viewers. We're going to be the first to report on this. This is a breaking story. How can I spin this? How can I get your attention over here? And then our advertisers will see our viewership, and then we can modify the global discussion at this point. And I think that we had a lot of fragilities in our society, systemic fragilities that existed, and I think a lot of those are becoming apparent right now. I also think that they are becoming weaponized. So, and I think that there's a reason why people are polarized, because that needs to happen. Because if we are able to act collectively against these systemic fragilities and corruptions, we're going to seek to untangle them, right? And that's not good for some of the investor bank accounts that are, and there's a lot of moving parts that take correspondence. And so if we are unable to correspond with each other, and then if the platforms that are saying that, hey, when you are coordinating with each other, this does not fit our interest, and the policymakers that are creating these interests, right? So yeah, these people are uneducated. They are, and I'm not saying that you are, and I'm not saying that I'm not, okay? I'm saying that the masses have kind of fallen prey to the mimetic perpetuation and a loss of identity over time. And I'm not saying that it's not inevitable, but it is something that we should see and we should pay attention to. And this comes as we discover the capabilities of the technology that's at our fingertips. We, as human beings, we've harnessed the powers of gods, right? I'm not the only one that thinks this, and I'm not, don't tell the church, I'm not blaspheming, but if you took yourself, your capabilities, and your technologies, and you took them to the primitive person, and you showed them that you had the ability to eradicate species through genetic modification, or create new ones even, or modify viruses, or create them, or make new vegetables and fruits even. I mean, if you took these capabilities and you showed them to a primitive person who maybe they only had the fire and the sandcastle home, this would be, they would think that you had the power of a god. Like, if you could come in and completely exterminate an entire species of fish by with a net, I don't know, just if you could do this, if you know. And so if we have these powers, by all means, let's not be, what do they say, if we harness the power of gods, let's not be shitty ones, excuse my intelligence. But we should be responsible, socially responsible. And I think that having a democracy it's good for the masses. I feel like I don't feel like as a single person that there is one thing that I could personally say or do. I would like to have these conversations, and I would like to be able to have more of them. I know that they don't have a lot of sex appeal, but democracy, I feel like, is important to me. You know, I come from a military family. I joined the military, and we kind of had this, family belief that these are values that we have. We have, if you don't like something, change it. If you don't want to have a tyrannical government, so it's your obligation to get involved and to be educated about what's going on within it, and your votes. It's important that you vote, but then when you vote, it's going to be important that that vote, that the masses that voted, that those votes be honored, and the outcomes not be threatened through rigging or insidious means, right? So that's an issue. Um, and it's hard because since a lot of the people have adopted these frames of mind and thinking, society is pretty much on this autopilot path of corrosion, and it might not be able to be undone, because there are people who, let's say that they go to court and they find out that Trump won the election. It's possible that the media, with its polarization tactics and stuff, announced the winner of the losing party. Let's say that Biden. Let's say that it was Biden, right? And he was going to court, and Trump had done all of these things to change the election. Let's say that they found votes only with his name, and then there was not one third party, not one vote for Biden or something like that. And Biden was going to court. You guys would be like, "Oh my gosh, this guy is crazy." So if you think about it like that, that's kind of how empathy is made, right? And that's kind of how sense making is made. How you can make sense and have reason and rationalize things, right? So it's not just about what president takes the seat. For a lot of people, what it is about is the democratic process. And at least when these things go to court, it is going to be very important that we take a look at, and that we are informed, that we are educated about the holes in the system, that those things are transparent, and that they are rectified, regardless of whether it means that Trump does win the election or not. The people need to have confidence in the democratic process and these elections. They don't need to actually understand that they are conceding that process and the knowledge of the faults in it in order to have their candidate win. Okay? And a lot because there was more than just the presidency on that ballot. If you can't trust the presidential candidate to be selected because of faults and corruption and rigging and dishonesty, how can you trust the smaller local level things, right? That don't have the national attention. You can't. And you forfeit your democratic privilege. And then for some of you, it's also the obligation. Like, people have better things to do. You've got social situations that you'd rather be involved in. Some people would rather just be on their couch smoking a blunt. Some people want to be having a beer. Some people just want to be watching TV with their kids. Some people, want to go to the bar and make out with strangers. Some people want to, just be outside tinkering on their cars. People have things that they rather be doing. These big discussions, they're huge. They're different. They're not always sexy, and they're not always fun. For some people, this is what they like to talk about and think about, right? They like these enlightening thoughts, these things, these ideas that challenge their original, what they're thinking originally. Okay, and so, well, I almost kind of feel like the decay of our democracy is inevitable. I mean, let's talk about what happens when that happens. I mean, at least we need to openly admit and not have it look like a conspiracy. We just need to say, hey, it's fallen and now we have these people in charge, instead of letting them trick us into believing that we have something that exists that no longer exists. We need to be honest with ourselves and say, no, it doesn't exist anymore. Our votes don't count. It's a horse and pony show. Nobody's going to show up to these elections anymore because it doesn't matter who you circled in or how many people circled that person in. I don't want to waste my time at a poll so you can make me pretend to believe this stuff. I mean, that's when really deceptive, creepy stuff goes on, right? And so, if we're going to be open to the idea of maybe like a constitutional autocracy of some sort, like, yeah, we have these people that they're going to nominate who they want to be in office. It's fine, this nepotism and whatnot, right? And they got to follow the Constitution, but doesn't matter if they're not following it now. Are they gonna follow it later? It's just like, it's just a fun thing for them to do. Why donate to them anyway? I don't know. But if it's just to the highest bidder, there's that. I guess you aspire to be that guy. Somebody asked me, so when this happens, what do we do? Where do we move? And I'm going to be honest with you. I think that if we don't have confidence in the process of voting in the democratic system after January, February, I just I have my own predictions. I don't think that we need to move. I think that when I feel like the media probably did this because they have these, like, they have things that they like to do to kind of just catalyze chaos. And I think they might have announced the wrong winner. Like, let's say Biden won, I think they would have announced Trump won so that later they could do the lawsuits, and then like the people would go nuts. Because what did somebody say? You hand a emotionally unstable person something that they like, and then you take it away, they're gonna have a meltdown. They're gonna lose it. They're gonna wreck everything. They wanted that thing and you took it away. Like, you go to a kid's house and you have two toddlers, and one of the toddlers is playing with a toy they like over there, then you gotta leave and you gotta tell that kid he's gotta give that toy back. Your kid's gonna have a meltdown. It's gonna be embarrassing and it's gonna be destructive. Things might get broken. That toy might get broken. So it could have been just something to do to ensure that there was that level of chaos, because in the event that there was, let's say we find out Trump won by a landslide. I mean, by all means, my candidate didn't win. She was the libertarian candidate. So I'm looking at this from the outside. It doesn't matter to me, but I do care about the preservation of the democratic process. I really care about it. But I'll accept if we lose it. If there's anybody who wants to like do something about it, by all means, but my resources are limited by myself. If all these people, we need to have these conversations if we want to preserve it. But what if we don't? What if we don't? It's a lot. I mean, if you have this many people want this and this many people want that, you're gonna have, no matter what, this many people unhappy, unless we can come together collectively and talk about making sense of things, right? So, I do kind of feel like this was a horse and pony show for the media in order to manipulate something. I think that no matter what, they were going to announce the wrong winner so that they could have, because you'll notice that the people in government, really, except for Pelosi and Biden and Kamala, are like, even the states there, like, yeah, we're gonna need to do a recount, that wasn't right, or for whatever reason. I know Georgia at least is, and I know some people are worried about the ImageCast evolution machine from Dominion voting, because how do you have a default in 6,000 ballots in one sitting that were for one candidate that were counted for the opposite candidate? And it's crazy because it wasn't like the circles were sent to just random other candidates. It was one candidate, right? And then you had the ballots come in. I forget the number. It was like, what, hundreds of thousands or thousands of them come in, what, overnight at the close. And granted, they might have been mail-in ballots, but are you telling me there wasn't one third party? There wasn't, and if these were military ballots, you are telling me that this many military ballots came in and there was not one for Trump? The military, I think the majority of the military is not, the military and law enforcement is kind of, I mean, you might have people in there that are like, yeah, we need to go back to war, so let's do, the Democrats or something. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that I'm former military. When I was in, and I think we heard Trump was gonna run in one election and then he didn't, and we were like, dang, that would have been funny. That would have been great. We'd have liked that. I don't know. And then he did run. I mean, and I'm I like my libertarian candidate, so I didn't choose the left nut or the right nut. Voted for the Johnson. That was my favorite campaign slogan ever. But we shouldn't talk about who we voted for. It's blasphemy. I think that in the event that our democracy collapses, and this is just my forecast of events, I don't think that it's gonna be just like the nation just burning to the ground and bombs going off and just people. I don't think maybe there'll be tanks in the street. I don't know. But I think what we'll see, I think it'll happen slowly. And I think we'll start to see states that just want to separate. And we'll probably end up just seeing a division amongst the different cultural value systems and areas. But if we can preserve the democracy, then we need to find a way to be able to move away from these corrupt systems, these corrupt information systems, and we need to be able to find a way back to being educated about our society and how it operates, the infrastructure. I think we need to take a little bit of time, each of us, to kind of get involved in the process, and not that we all have to have our own input, just I think that we need to No, I think we need to vote. We need to vote when we need to vote. We need to call the representatives when we see an issue. We need to write a letter. We need to know what we need to know. We need to have central locations where we could do that. And we need to jump off these platforms that are controlling us and polarizing us. And when we see doublethink themes, we need to say, hey, these are two mutually exclusive doublespeak themes. These are two memetics that perpetuate something, and say, Is this destabilizing? Does this kind of take me down? Does this make me like kind of grasp onto something that I should fight with somebody about? Is this a conflict? Is this something that produces a conflict or a podium that I could stand on? Am I going to be accepting the battle, or am I just going to be outraged and upset about it? Right? These are things that we need to think about. We need to think about our emotions, and we need to make sense of things. And we need to not be doubling down on the confirmation of our own biases. What we do need to be doing is being honest with ourselves, especially about things like now. We need to be honest about, if this was the other guy doing it, would it be okay? And if the answer to that is no, then it's not really about what the guy is doing, it's about the thing that's getting done, right? So you want Biden to win. There could be this corruption and it could be Trump winning. You wanted Trump to win. There could be this corruption and it could have been Biden winning. Either which way it goes. If it's happening because the process is interrupted and you would give up your democratic privileges and obligations to have this candidate, I think you should really stop to consider, right? If I was going to give up my democratic privilege, right? If I was going to say, okay, I forfeit this, what kind of candidate would I do it for? Would I put somebody, would I do it for Biden? Would I do it for Trump? Is that who I would want to be my leader? The one that I